A blind old dog lies dying on a dung heap, while drunken strangers feast in his master's house. Inside those walls, a young man watches more than 100 men eat his family out of house and home, drink his father's wine, and pressure his mother to remarry a stranger, because everyone believes his father is dead. He doesn't believe it, and that belief is about to start a war. 20 years earlier, a king named Odysseus sailed away from the island of Ithaca to fight in a war at Troy. 8 years have passed since Troy finally fell, and still he hasn't come home. His son, Telemachus, was a baby when his father left. Now he's nearly a man, and he's the only person in the palace still holding out hope. Everyone else has moved on, especially the pack of noblemen who have taken over his home. They call themselves suitors. Officially, they're there competing for the hand of Telemachus' mother, Queen Penelope, because Ithaca has been without a king for 2 decades, and the island needs one. Unofficially, they're an occupying force, and they know it. They eat the palace's food, drink its wine, sleep with its servants, and wait for Penelope to finally give in and choose one of them as her husband. The ringleader is a man named Antinius, sharp-tongued and entitled, who has decided that 3 years of hospitality is more than enough, and it's time Penelope made her choice. When Telemachus challenges him, calling the suitors what they are, Antinius doesn't flinch. He reminds the young man that in this world, a man does whatever he wants, and that so far, nobody has stopped him from doing exactly that in Telemachus' own house.
Penelope has her own reasons for stalling. She already lost a husband to this war, in every sense but a body to bury, and she isn't willing to lose her son to a fight he can't win.
Zeus's law of hospitality says a host must treat any stranger well, because that stranger could secretly be a god. The suitors have twisted that law into a shield, daring Penelope or Telemachus to break it first and give them an excuse for violence. Among the wreckage of the household, one figure hasn't given up. Argus, Odysseus' old hunting dog, blind and dying, still lying by the gate like he's waiting for footsteps that never come. When the suitors mock and threaten to put the dog out of its misery, Telemachus steps in to protect him. A small, doomed gesture that says everything about how powerless he actually is in his own home. Not everyone at that gate is an enemy, though. A weathered old swineherd named Eumaeus has stayed loyal for years, tending the family's animals and quietly loathing the men who slaughter them for feasts. He's one of the few servants Telemachus can still trust, along with an old nurse who helped raise him. It costs him. When Melanthius catches him lingering near the palace to check on Argus, the suitors humiliate the old man in front of everyone and banish him back to the farm, sneering that he answers to a mistress who probably doesn't even remember his name. Eumaeus goes without a fight. There's nothing else he can do. But it's one more sign of exactly how far the household has fallen. Others, like the arrogant goat herd Melanthius and a scheming maid named Melantho, have already picked their side, currying favor with the suitors because they've decided Odysseus is never coming back. Antinous, in particular, has been working on Melantho directly, using her closeness to Penelope to press his case for marriage, and reminding her, not so subtly, that a slave's loyalty naturally belongs to whoever is about to become the new master of the house. Penelope has one more trick up her sleeve, or she did until recently. For a long stretch, she managed to stall the suitors by promising to choose a husband as soon as she finished weaving a burial shroud for Odysseus' aging father. And every night, in secret, she quietly unraveled whatever she'd woven that day, keeping the project from ever actually finishing. It worked for years. It only fell apart because Melantho, the disloyal maid who has her own reasons for wanting Penelope out of the way, noticed the pattern and reported it straight to Antinous, handing him the exact leverage he needed to start pushing harder for an answer. That question hangs over everything. Is he dead or isn't he? Nobody actually knows. Rumors drift in from other returning veterans, other kings who made it home from Troy years ago. Some say Odysseus never left the war zone alive. Some say he's a prisoner somewhere. A traveling stranger passing through mentions that King Menelaus of Sparta made it home ages ago and might actually know something real if anyone could just go ask him. That stranger turns out to be more than he appears. He calls himself Mentor, and there's something unsettling and knowing about the way he watches Telemachus. Wise eyes, someone calls him later, the same kind of eyes people used to say Odysseus had. Mentor tells the young man plainly, stop waiting around for scraps of gossip.
Go to Pylos, then to Sparta, and ask King Menelaus directly whether your father is alive. It's a dangerous idea. Telemachus is the only male heir in the house, the only thing standing, however weakly, between the throne and Antinous. If he leaves and something happens to him on the road, the suitors win by default. But staying is its own kind of death. Trapped in a house where he has no power, watching his mother get worn down day by day, waiting for a father who might already be a ghost. He decides to go, and he decides to do it in secret. He tells Eumaeus and the old nurse to keep his mother calm and buy him time. And under cover of night, with Mentor at his side, he slips down to the shore, boards a ship, and sails out on a rising tide before anyone in the palace realizes he's gone. For the first time in his life, Telemachus is doing something entirely his own. It doesn't stay secret for long. When the suitors discover the empty rooms and the missing boat, panic quickly turns into calculation. If Telemachus comes back with proof his father is dead, he could legally claim the throne himself, and the suitors' whole 3-year siege collapses overnight. If he comes back with nothing, the standoff simply continues. Either way, from Antinous' point of view, the safest outcome is for Telemachus not to come back at all. A woman named Eris, who thrives on exactly this kind of chaos, offers the obvious solution. Kill him on the road home and make it look like bandits. She wants proof. His nose, his ears, anything that confirms the job is done. And she knows exactly where to strike. Telemachus will have to pass through the coastal temple at Pylos on his way back from Sparta. And that lonely stretch of road is the perfect place for an ambush. While that plot is set in motion behind him, Telemachus is stepping into a world far bigger than the walls of his father's palace. And it's worth going back to understand exactly what happened to the man he's searching for. Because the story of Odysseus' last 20 years is its own long nightmare. One disaster piling on top of the last. It starts, in a sense, with the trick that ended the Trojan War. Odysseus is remembered by everyone who fought alongside him as the mind behind the wooden horse. The plan that let Greek soldiers slip inside Troy's walls and burn the city from within after 10 years of siege. Soldiers who served under him still talk about that night. The horse, the screaming, the fires. Before they ever set sail for home, there was a ritual of offering made to the gods, something rescued from the sea and carried to Athena's temple, a gesture meant to buy the fleet safe passage across the water. It didn't work. Not for Odysseus. His ship pulled away from the ruins of Troy with a strong crew and a fair wind, chasing the setting sun west, full of men who genuinely believed the hard part was over. It wasn't. Almost immediately, the fleet began splitting up, other kings taking other routes home,
and Odysseus made the call to take his time, stop along unfamiliar coasts, and gather supplies rather than race straight back the way his rival Agamemnon did. That decision led his ships to raid a coastal village for food, a moment that should have been simple, and instead turned ugly.
The frightened locals mistook the Greeks for a different, far more feared group of raiders. Vague, terrifying stories were already spreading about people from the sea, an unknown enemy attacking settlements up and down the coast.
When the villagers realized their mistake, they had a warning of their own. If Odysseus's men were heading toward a place called Ithaca, they wouldn't like what they found when they got there. Nobody on the crew understood what that meant yet. They just kept sailing.
Supplies running low again, they eventually put in on the shore of a strange island and stumbled onto a cave stuffed with cheese and livestock. Clearly someone's home, someone very well provided for. Rather than take what they needed and leave, they made a fatal choice to wait for the owner to return, hoping for the kind of hospitality Zeus's law was supposed to guarantee. What came home that night wasn't a person they could reason with.
It was a cyclops, a giant, and it rolled a boulder across the mouth of the cave, sealing them inside with him, and began eating them one by one. There was no fighting their way out, and no talking their way out either. Survival meant a plan. Sharpen the end of a heavy wooden stake in the fire, wait for the monster to fall into a drunken sleep, and blind him in a single brutal strike.
It worked, but it wasn't clean. Good men died before that plan came together, and even after they scrambled out past the flock the next morning, hiding among the sheep to slip past the blinded giant, the nightmare wasn't over. As the Cyclops screamed in pain and rage, he cried out a name that stopped the surviving crew cold. Poseidon, god of the sea. And it wasn't just an insult, it was a father's name.
The creature they'd blinded was Poseidon's own son. From that moment forward, the men were certain their voyage home was cursed, and they weren't wrong to think so. Every rough current and stubborn headwind from then on felt like proof that the god of the sea himself had turned against them.